Hi, welcome to another mentoring moment. I'm Dr. Berin Gilfillan, and we're in a series called The Power Principles of Life, and looking at profound truths that are helpful in every area of our lives. And today we're going to look at the power of proximity. All of these begin with the letter P, and it's amazing how many there are. And the power of proximity deals with access. It deals with us getting close to power, to getting close to people. And the power of proximity is incredible because if you have proximity to power and you have a proximity to people, it has tremendous influence in things that will maybe affect your life or maybe affect the lives of others. I used to work for Reinhard Bonnke. I was his TV producer, but there were only 5 of us that traveled together. It was Reinhard and then his assistant and then a sound engineer, my wife and myself. And for 3.5 years, we traveled all over the world, and I had proximity to Reinhard. I remember being in the country of Ghana and the city of Ho, and it was a small little town in the northern part of the country. And I remember there being in a private home, and we were just sitting around a table, and Reinhard was talking about, a book that had been written about him. And I said to Reinhard, you can write a book. I said, you've got it in you. And I just remember he just said, no, I'm German and my English is not that good. And I just said, Reinhard, no, just share your heart. Just speak, write those words. And out of that really was the inspiration to write his first book called Evangelism by Fire. And, I don't know if I'm sure there were many other factors that were involved, but I do know that I had access, I had proximity. I was able to speak at that time into his life. And, multitudes have been blessed because of that. And, I just been reading through the book of Esther and looking at the story of how proximity to the king made such a huge difference in the story. And first of all, you have this evil guy by the name of Haman, who gets promoted to the highest place in the kingdom next to the king. And he now has proximity, but he uses it for evil, and he uses it with wrong motivations. But he pretends to be serving the king, and he goes to the king and says, there's this people, and they're not in your best interest. And he really has a vendetta against the Jewish people because of Mordecai. And he uses that proximity to get this decree and to get access to the power and to get the signet ring of the king, and then to issue a decree to kill all the Jewish people. He also uses monetary measures like, the 10,000 bags of silver that he gave into the treasury to get it. And very often people who want proximity, they use money and they use financial gain to get their way and to try and manipulate the situation. And he gets that access, and then he sets the decree in order. And he's just sort of riding high, and he's going to destroy all the Jews, and he's going to destroy Mordecai, and he doesn't even know that there's a greater proximity, and that's the proximity of Esther. You see, he had authority through position and through his authority he was granted, which was political authority. And then you have Esther, who had relational authority. Relational proximity is a greater power than even position of authority, because relational proximity gives a person access to communicate, to speak into the life of a person, and to have access to be able to present petition and to be able to ask a favor. And we see that Esther comes into the situation, and she's now facing this powerful person by the name of Haman, who's got this political type of proximity, but he doesn't have the relationship proximity the way she has. And so, the king now, gets invited to a banquet, and a second banquet with Haman. And then finally the king says to Esther, what do you want? And this is what he says to her. It's amazing. It says, so the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. And on the second day at the banquet of wine, the king again said to Esther, what is your petition? And it shall be granted you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom it shall be done. See, relational proximity is so powerful because it's personal, and he willing to grant up to half the kingdom. That's how much favor there is with relational proximity. And so we know that Queen Esther answered, said, if I found favor in your sight, O king, if it pleases the king, let my life be given at my petition, my people at my request. We have been sold My people and I to be destroyed, to be killed, and be annihilated. We have been sold as male and female slaves. If we had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy could not compensate for the king's loss. And then she now says, this is a plot of this man, Haman, and she's able to expose. She's able to communicate truth. She's able to bring a petition before the king. And we know the end of the story, how, Haman is the one who's destroyed. Queen Esther is promoted, Mordecai is promoted, and that relational proximity is what trumped the whole deal. Now, when it comes to our relationship with God, it's an amazing thing. Jesus has given us proximity to the Father. He's given us access. The book of Hebrews says these words, and so, dear brothers and sisters, we can boldly enter into heaven's most holy place because of the blood of Jesus. By his death, Jesus opened a new and life-giving way through the curtain into the most holy place. And since we have a great high priest who rules over the house of God, let us go right into the presence of God with sincere hearts, fully trusting him. God says, I've given you proximity. I've given you access. I've given you through the veil, through the blood of Christ, through what we have received through Jesus. We have got proximity to the Father. Now we can use it as we can stay far away from that throne, or we can go into the presence of God. And the writer of Hebrews is saying, let's go into that place. Let's use the proximity that God's given us. And when we look at the life of Jesus as we close this out, Jesus had the 120 day of Pentecost. Then he had the 70 that he sent out 2 by 2. Then he had 12. There were his 12 closest disciples. And then he had 3. And the 3 were Peter, James, and John. And they had access to his closest miracles, his most powerful miracles. They were the ones who went in. They were there at the transfiguration. They saw things the others never saw. The proximity that we have to Christ is one of the most precious things we have. You have to cultivate it. You have to communicate. You have to build it and develop it. And the people in my life that have proximity to me is the people who I really care for, who I have relationship with, who've been loyal to me, who have been, have been there for the long run, who have been showed consistency. And so proximity, it's something that we have to cultivate. We have to pray for. We have to ask God for favor. We have to build. We have to invest. We have to sow into proximity, because proximity gives us access to petition. Proximity gives us access to power. It's like proximity is what gives us access to the throne of God. And that is a tremendous power that we need to understand that principle. There's power in proximity, and we need to cultivate it to its max. So until next time, God bless you.